The following video is a clip from my stream. We watched Pro Gun versus Anti-Gun. It's from Jubilee's Middle Ground series. The video is really good, so I wanted to share it here. Bear in mind, this video is heavily edited to only the stream highlights. The video itself is over an hour and a half long, and I wasn't trying to repost all of that onto YouTube. But below, I'll have a link in the description to Jubilee's entire video. If you like ours, definitely go check out theirs, watch the whole thing. Please like and subscribe, really helps out the channel. And if you want, head over to Twitch, find Prolific Dante, give me a follow. I try and stream at least 2 times a week, every week. It's a lot of reaction content, some gaming, some music reviews. I'm new to the YouTube space, so my speaking is not always the best, especially yesterday. Allergies were getting the best of your boy. So there's a lot of mumbling, but for the most part, you can understand everything I'm saying.
Welcome back to Middle Ground. My name's John. I'm the host of the Radical Empathy Podcast, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Our topic is pro-gun versus anti-gun, and our first prompt is, I fired a gun. If that's true for you, please step forward.
I have fired a gun.
So my family does hunt. That's a part of our culture. And when I was younger, my dad, I've gone with him. I've never killed an animal, but I have gone with him for like tracking purposes or, being outside, connecting with nature. And he did teach me how when I was younger. So it's not something I've done regularly, but I have done it.
Same here. I've got like family friends that are very into guns, and one summer they wanted me to have the experience of like shooting a gun. So I tried it. I didn't love it, but try everything once, I guess.
I spent a lot of time in the Middle East growing up, so when we were in the Middle East, we would hunt, use guns.
If you're gonna ask me, but I'm cutting him off, you're gonna ask me, shooting a gun is fun as fuck. That shit is exhilarating.
In general, and when I would come to America, my family's had guns, I even have guns, and so I've shot multiple times.
Well, I've shot a gun, I loved it, and my whole family loves guns, so I think that's kind of how the culture was instilled on me.
Yeah, well, my whole life is guns. I own over 300-400 guns, you know what I mean? So I shoot them all the time, every day. And I'm also a United States Marine Corps war veteran. I've been to war.
Black Rambo, I shoot a gun every day. God damn. Not a day goes by that I'm not fucking firing off something, goddamn it. Y'all got me fucked up.
I grew up around guns. My father was military and police. My older brother was military and police. My little brother is military. And I was taught to fire weapons at a very early age because my father believed that if you remove the curiosity from a child about the gun and they're uncomfortable with it, they won't be interested. So he was right. It created gun safety in our home. I did not like firing a gun when I was young, and I fire guns now regularly as an adult. It is about the gun and how it feels and how it shoots and how you operate it. So
that's crazy. I do that with my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't even mess with them.
Yep.
You know what
It takes
I mean?
away all
I
the
can keep them all
curiosity.
over the house.
Yeah.
They don't want it
Yeah.
no more. Dad, man, that's your gun. You know.
I was the same. I grew up in Alabama, but my family didn't hunt.
Keeping guns all over the house with your kids, though, is fucking lunacy. That's... I don't even like leaving fucking knives out because of my kids. Leaving guns out, he's like, oh, they don't. Today they don't. I can't even fathom just being in a house where just guns are laying out around and my kids are fucking like moving. Like I can't find a fucking remote and moving a goddamn Glock out of the way. It's like, God damn it, Dad, you left your Glock here. I can't find the fucking remote anywhere. I can't fathom that world.
And weren't military. My dad's a pastor, but they just believe in them for self-defense. And so they were always around the house. We were also instructed very young with firearm safety. And then if my brothers especially wanted to shoot growing up, then my dad would take them and practice with them. I mostly didn't want to because I also have never loved the feeling of shooting a gun. Even now, I have a gun. I'm a registered concealed carry permit owner, but I don't love the feeling, to be honest. And you're right, it differs based on the gun.
Mm-hmm. Would anybody want to kind of elaborate just on like the feeling of firing a gun, whether it's positive or negative, just as more of an experience?
It depends on the gun, but a lot of them kick really heavily.
I think the person too. I got post-traumatic stress, but they told me I got it different. I get a rush. So now when I shoot a gun, it's like, you know what I'm saying? I relieve all the stress, everything about me. I'm having a great time, you know what I'm saying? So it's all on.
Guns are like Viagra for this nigga.
We're gonna bring in our disagreeer.
Why you never shot a gun?
So growing up, my family, we didn't really have a lot of guns around the house. And my cousins or my relatives didn't really have guns, or it wasn't like an outing.
It wasn't a thing. It wasn't
an
around,
outing, and I found a pellet gun. That's the only thing that my father had growing up, was a pellet gun that he hid in his closet away. And it was one day where me and my sister were playing around, and I found it, and I actually, pointed it towards my sister. So it was a very traumatic experience for myself, right, and for my family, to the point where when that was brought up, it was more so like somebody said, education on how guns are not as helpful around communities of color. It was never a curiosity for me because of that traumatic experience that I had with my sibling and not really having guns around. So I just never had that inkling in my life to even try to go to a range or.
Do you mind if I ask? Did you actually accidentally shoot your sister as well, or did you just play?
No,
okay.
It was just watching film and we're playing.
I got you.
Bad guy or good guy.
I could have made a big mistake.
And it was a pellet gun, and my mom was like, "Boy, if you point that again," and
your mom knew that you wasn't supposed to point it.
Right.
If they would have taught you earlier,
right,
you would have known that.
Right, but I think they didn't teach me because we didn't have guns around.
All right, we're gonna reset. Next prompt. I'd let my children be around guns. Will the agreeers please step forward?
Well, I currently have 3 children, ages 10, 7, and 4. I mean, I carry regularly, so they know that the gun is on my person. They never are curious about it. They never really want to touch it because they know what I've taught them, right? And that's what it comes down to, is I've taught them, you can touch this, you can look at it, it's not that exciting. In fact, it's actually quite scary. If you were to use this wrong, you would kill somebody.
I've always felt like that too, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't show the kids when they're young, like, if you say, hey, here's my gun, come on outside, you wanna see what the gun do? Come on, put your earmuffs on, let's go, put your glasses on. Pow! The kids, oh, I don't want to touch that. I don't want nothing to do with that, Daddy. Hey, let me leave that alone, and they learn. You have to show them, you know what I'm saying? You have to lead by example.
Rambo, you said you had 300 guns?
Yeah, I got about 300 guns, yeah. And my kids are on them all the time, all day. I got them all around my bed.
You don't worry about them
Well,
ever
first
picking
of
one
all,
up?
I don't leave them loaded. To operate a gun, you can't just grab it and squeeze it. You know what I mean? You gotta cock it back, take it off of safety. You might have to take it out the holster. You know what I mean? I have one gun that I keep on me for stuff like that. But the rest of them, they're in safes, and maybe a shotgun here. Maybe I might have a gun under the table somewhere, in a magnet. A couple guns all over, I got a couple.
This makes a lot more sense to me now that he's saying this, because at first I was just like, this dude just has guns laying all over the house. But in hindsight, that's an ignorant thought. Like, he respects guns, so he has them all over the house, but he has them in the right places they should be. If it were me and I had guns, which I don't, but if I did, I would definitely teach my kids about gun safety and let them know that I have them very often. Because the last thing you want is a kid to stumble across you with a gun they've never encountered one before. That's when shit tends to go left. But if you instill in them like, hey, this is what this is very dangerous, show them how it's dangerous, they're way less likely to fuck around and find out. They do have those like fringe cases where if you show a kid, they're going to do it anyways. But more often than not, if you actually sit a child down and teach them that, hey, this is not okay, hey, this is what this is, instead of making everything one big secret and making things taboo, it's less likely to happen, and they're more likely to respect the gun itself.
If I had children, I would teach them in a proper way. I think it's harder specifically because I was born and raised in California. Is it hard in California? Absolutely. Especially because the right to bear and conceal arms is definitely harder to obtain. In terms of the school systems and public school systems, I would not trust my children to be trained with a gun. I think that's something for the parents, and that's something that should be instilled by the parents from the young age, like we've discussed, because
yeah, absolutely. If you have a gun, you shouldn't rely on anybody else to teach your kids about guns, especially like schools. Yeah, public schools have a hard enough time teaching kids to think critically. Public schools don't even teach you how to manage your own money. You should teach a kid how to respect guns in the same way you teach your kids how to respect money. those things should be handled with the same level of care.
My son's been having a loaded gun in his room since he was 10 years old. And his
You
room
said
is
loaded?
Loaded. Not
A loaded gun in his room since 10 years old. This guy's bouncing back and forth.
well, not one in the chamber, but in the magazine. He knows how to operate it and everything. He has a bulletproof vest. He has a gun. He has everything. Now he has way more. I'm a Marine Corps war veteran.
Where do you even get a bulletproof vest for a 10-year-old?
Seen death. People could get crazy, and I just had to teach my son, like, hey, he might have to save me. You can't wait on the police, man. You can call them, but it might be too late.
I understand his point. It's just so goddamn radical. It's just like fucking me up a little bit. Because it's just the visual of a 10-year-old knowing how to operate a loaded gun. If somebody wants to kill someone, they're just going to do it. A gun just makes it easier. So if a kid wanted to end his parents, he could easily just like stab him in his sleep and kill him. It sounds crazier to me than it actually probably should be. I think it's just because it's something that's not the norm, something I've never thought I would hear or heard before.
I don't plan to have kids, but if I did, I would absolutely want them trained, particularly young girls. I think it's really, really important for females to learn to exercise the Second Amendment and to protect themselves. Like, if you want to talk about feminism, that is the only thing that actually makes you equal to a man as a woman. Like, that is, to me, just, it's a crime to not teach girls how to defend themselves. Yep. I want to add one
I agree. If you're a woman, and especially in today's America, you should seriously consider owning a gun. And not just owning it, knowing how to operate it, shooting it multiple times and getting comfortable with it. And if you buy a gun and you don't know how to operate it, you're just going to get it taken from you and get shot with it. The statistics for the amount of people who get shot with their own gun is insane.
Caveat though, which is I do have another family member I won't identify, but who had some significant issues in adolescence and was having a lot of violence issues and was having some run-ins with the police. In those kinds of situations, you also have a responsibility as a parent, as a family member, to keep dangerous guns away from kids who are showing those kinds of signs. And that's on you as a parent in the home. You know if your kid's not right.
Facts. It's more of a mental health issue than the issue about the guns themselves.
You know,
right.
And you have a duty to ensure that they are no longer accessing those and that you're notifying law enforcement, you're notifying the school. And I do think, but like, I don't want to just carte blanche say like all kids are fine around guns. Not all kids are fine around guns, so.
We're gonna pull in our...
That makes me want to piggyback off that to say this. I don't own guns. And the main reason I don't own guns is because my son is extremely impulsive. And he has a hard enough time listening to directions as is. So it would be inherently stupid for me to have a gun in my home when I haven't even gotten that under control yet. So that's why I don't have a gun, because I just don't trust. I don't think he would intentionally hurt someone, but I don't think he has the impulse control right now to not mess with it if he were to find it.
Disagreeers?
So I would say, you know, just this last year, it was reported that among child-related deaths in America, gun violence was one of the main factors. That's alarming, right? Even before I knew that statistic, if I ever had kids, and I am planning on having kids, I would not allow my children to be around firearms.
Where did you get your statistics from? Because sometimes I look on the internet, it say one thing, then it say another thing, and so you might be looking at something that might not even be right.
But it is accurate.
Well, it's accurate.
I don't know, I'm just making sure.
It is accurate, but it's accurate because death in children is exceedingly rare. There's very few things that kill them, period. And when you look at the number of things that could kill them, yes, that outranks like drowning or being run over by your parents' car. But that statistic, and many like it, get thrown around to say like this is a huge problem that's happening all the time. That's not the reality. It's just that it's a low
I feel
sample
like
size.
even though if it's like a low probability, we should do what we can to stop it, right? Like,
And most kids, when they get killed by guns, get killed by adults, right? Like, it's rare that you hear about like kids shooting kids of their same age. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that.
It's still the truth that is the number one killer of children.
I mean, is there a
guns.
number of children that you would care about?
Is it
killing?
suicide killing?
Well, so I worked as a mental health.
Gun-related.
Yeah, so I worked as a mental health therapist, and I specifically worked with a lot of kids too. But yeah, I mean, right now we have 50,000 suicides a year. Of that, 29,000 are from guns. Of those, 90% are successful when people do attempt. But when they do attempt with other different things, so say cutting your wrist, it's at 6.2%. If we look look at things like drug overdoses, it's at like 10, 12%. It's because you have the ability to call the police, you have the ability for someone to find you. And so when it comes to things like having guns around,
that stems back to the mental health issue. And the only issue, the problem with the gun being that it works too well. But that is a mental health issue more than anything. Instead of worrying about like why we need to get rid of guns, we need to worry about why are there so many children wanting to kill themselves. Look into that. That is way bigger of an issue.
And the other thing is too, is there has to be a line drawn for everyone. Forget everything, throw everything out the door. Is there a number that would draw you to say, you know, I want heavy restrictions? I've had debates with thousands of people over this, and they'll say like, no, I don't care. It's amendment right, which it's an amendment. We literally added it, and we changed the amendments, and we have many times. So to me, I throw that all out the window and just say, what is that number? What does that look like to you?
I think for me, the number would have to be that you could prove that there are more lives being lost to gun violence than saved.
Oh, that's easy. That's already happening right now.
It's no way. All right, so last year,
yeah,
about 18,000 people were killed with a gun.
Yeah.
They estimate 162,000 people saved their own lives in interactions where they
Wait, you said how many people died with a gun last year?
Around 18,800.
There's 29,000 just in suicides and guns last year. You're completely wrong.
I said gun homicides. 18,000 or so gun homicides. We're going to separate
Yeah, he's got to drop the suicide point. The suicide point is not relevant at all. That is a completely separate conversation. That he needs to let that go completely. That is like, I respect what he's saying, but the suicide thing is so fucking irrelevant. It's crazy. It does not matter. That has nothing to do with what's actually talking about here. People who commit suicide with guns would do it in other ways. The issue is mental health. It is not the guns. That to me is a bogus argument. It's a weak argument, and he needs to let that go. That's irrelevant. What she's saying makes more sense. It's the homicides with guns, because if the homicides were outweighing how many lives the gun saved, then there would be a problem. The suicides, to me, that is not a good argument at all.
Out.
Why?
Because suicides are a whole different matter and require different solutions. But we're going to talk about homicides where you have no control in the situation.
Yeah, that's right.
Around 18,000 people were murdered last year with guns.
Yeah.
162,000 are the rough estimates for how many people saved their lives last year with a gun.
And
so when
define
you
save your lives.
They were in interactions where the statistics show they would have definitely or certainly lost their lives had they not had a gun to protect themselves. So they were in high-stakes situations where had they not had a gun to protect themselves, it is almost certain they would have been murdered.
I have a question. Did they have to like shoot the gun in order to save themselves?
Yeah, that's statistic, because I've studied that statistic in depth. And what
you didn't seem to know it.
No,
they don't always have to have.
I feel like this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about. I think he is really trying to listen to react versus listen to understand.
Shot the gun. It is whether or not they had a gun. Sometimes they had to shoot it, sometimes they did not. But still, the statistics about how many people are saving their lives every year dwarf the number of gun violence homicides.
There's a problem with the statistic, I'll make it quick, which is there's no way to say for certain you would have died if you didn't have a gun. Let's say I go in to rob someone with a gun, and then they had a gun and I left. That is not a statistic to say you would have died if you didn't have a gun.
Right.
And that's what that study actually shows.
That's not what it showed. It shows they were in interactions where somebody had a gun to their head. They were in a high-stakes situation, and had they not had a gun to defend themselves,
would have for sure pulled the trigger.
They most certainly would have.
How would you know that?
The likelihood is very high that they
how
would have.
would you know that?
And again, what number is fine for you to say you don't have the right to defend yourself in that situation?
I would say that
because I would say I would much rather
from
err on the side of being able to defend yourself, and that's a lowball statistic. It's really around 500,000 to over 1 million they estimate maybe have interactions where they save their lives, but they can't measure that because it's harder to measure things that don't happen.
I had a question for the parents. So you said you're a parent and you're a parent. My question would be like, if your child started showing like mental health warning signs, like maybe they're like showing signs of early serial killer traits, or they're being really depressed, what do you think that letting them experience a gun and firing a gun and knowing how to use it, how do you think about that? Like,
yeah, I think that is, it's like non-negotiable. First of all, when I say they have access, they don't have access. All of our guns are in safes, right? So they can't access them anyway. But I'm telling you right now that if any of my children showed any mental distress, emotional distress, or had to be on medications, they would have no access to my weapons whatsoever. With guns, the issue is going to every time go back to mental health, not the gun. Because if a child has a mental health issue, they will find a way to hurt someone or hurt themselves.
It sounds like you're pretty vigilant.
I'm very vigilant,
And she's right. She's echoing everything I already said. The thing that annoys me about conversations like this is everything is so black and white, and but in reality, in the real world, there's nuance to things. People use guns for suicide because it's easier. If somebody wants to kill themselves and there's a gun and there's a thing of pills here, any person who's even remotely intelligent and really doesn't want to be on this earth anymore is going to pick the gun every single time because they know it's going to work. It's a mental health issue. Figure out why these kids are doing this. What is happening to make these kids do this? Versus, it's like those parents who are like, God damn it, my kid killed himself. If we just didn't keep that gun in the house. It's like, God damn, dude. It's not, sure. But how about why was your kid so upset? What drove your kid to do this? Instead of focusing on what he used to make it happen, focus on why it happened.
I do think that we have some issues with parents not taking authority in their home and not being able to recognize your child has an issue. If your child has an issue, you are vigilant in your home to make sure that those guns are secure and safe.
Man, if my kid is aggro and has mental health issues and signs of things coming up, I won't even let them drive. To be able to drive a car, you have to be of sound mind. And you can't be someone who's just flying off the handle, or else you'll kill somebody or you'll kill yourself.
If my husband went off the rocker, I'd take his guns from him.
There was a comment made earlier, I think by Hannah, that if there is an issue with your kid, if something's going on, and I just don't agree with that. I don't think that's true. You really do not always know, and I do think it's better to err on the side of safety. And like Dom was saying earlier, death by suicide with a gun is much higher, and you don't always know what's going on with your kids. And as much as you want to, and you want to say where is the parent, you don't know what that parent is going through. You don't know their situation. Maybe they have an inkling, or maybe they don't. Just giving that access to the kid and having it available puts them at a much higher risk.
Right. And I wanted to say, even with
sorry, I gotta put. You're expecting?
I am, yes.
Is this your first child?
You better hope so.
Congratulations.
Thank you. This is my first child. I am expecting a girl, and I don't think that I'm going to build her feminism off of whether or not she can have a gun. I want her to be able to protect herself, stand up for herself, and be comfortable in who she is without a gun.
So if she's very strong and very well trained, and she's a confident young lady, and she's a feminist, and she has a 300-pound man with a gun pointed at her, what do you think is...
Why does this man have a gun?
Well, yeah, okay.
There's men with guns all over
to clarify, I think, and this goes back to her statistic, which is, hey, it saves people because there's a gun pointed to their head. But that's why we're having the discussion of banning those guns. And if you say,
bad guys aren't ever going to get guns?
Well,
bad guys are never going to have
bad guys are going to be like,
We got. Yeah, what an L argument. Fucking drugs are banned and people get drugs all the fucking time. Absolute L argument. And we can go even further. It's harder to get guns in England. So you know what they do? They just stab people. Random stabbings. Bad people are going to do bad things. There's nothing you can do about it. There's just bad people in this world. You have to accept it. You can do things to limit the amount of bad people there are, but there will always be bad people in this world, and they will always find ways to kill people. It is not the guns. It's not. You take away the guns, guess who just has guns now? Bad people. You make guns harder for bad people to get, cool. They will figure out other ways to kill people, a la random stabbings. Bad people exist. You have to accept it. Learn how to protect yourself. Be present in your kids' lives, be present in other people's lives, try and be as cognizant as you can, and just accept that there are bad people in this world and bad things are going to happen.
Gun violence is destroying black communities. Will the agreeers please step forward?
All the gun-related deaths in America, black children are suffering the most from gun-related deaths. Since 2006, it has been increasing that black children are the victims of gun-related deaths in America. And out of 14% of black people in America, black people make up 83% of gun-related deaths in America. So,
and why do you think that's true?
I know it's true because I've seen it growing up. And
no. Yes, black people experience a lot of gun violence, sure. I don't really think it has to do with the guns. I think it more so has to do with a lack of positive role models for black people. For example, when it came to Obama, right? Obama wasn't like the best president we've ever had. He was a good president, but he wasn't the best president he ever had. He had his flaws for sure. But people would ask me, like, I would have friends that I have who are Republicans who would ask me, like, what is it about Obama that black people like so much? Like, they just like him because he's black, blah, 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 blah. Like, just because they feel like they have somebody in office that's them. It's like, it's that, but it's more so this in my eyes, which is for black children, their role models typically are rappers and athletes. That's about it. Rappers, athletes. These days you can add models on there and streamers a little bit, but I would say the main ones are rappers, athletes, and then models for little girls or singers for little girls. So my argument always was that Barack Obama is it will be a lot of black kids' first time seeing a positive black role model that isn't one of those things, that isn't in any level of entertainment, that used his education, used his mind, and uses networking abilities to achieve the highest seat America has to offer, which is the president. To me, that image alone is extremely powerful. We don't lift up enough non-entertaining black people in our community. It is one of our biggest downfalls. And so since we live in this world where it's you either rap or become an athlete or you're just going to be poor your whole life, once you are 18 or 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, you realize you can't rap worth shit and you're not that athletic, you pretty much give up on life because you don't have anything to look towards. You don't have any role models to look at and be like, I want to aspire to be that. And so lots of them give up and lots of them go to be like, well, my life's already shitter in the shit. I can't be I can't play ball. I can't rap. So I'm just going to go, I need to find money somehow. So I'm just going to start selling drugs or robbing or doing all types of other crimes because they don't see anything else. And with that comes the gun violence. But I don't think the gun violence I don't think if you just took guns out of the hood, all of our problems would be solved. I don't think that would help the communities. I think it'd make people live a little bit longer, but it would still be the same issues and there would still be the same level of aggression. The issue more so is there needs to be more black role models. There needs to be more fathers staying in the home, or not even necessarily staying in the home, like more so just staying in their children's lives. Those are the main issues destroying the black communities, not gun violence.
I've seen it by police-related deaths in America, and even being perceived with a water gun. Black children are murdered. For example, in the 1960s, we've seen the Black Panther Party in America, who started to legally, by the way, have a right to carry and protect their communities. But it wasn't until a black resistance group that Ronald Reagan at the time, who was the governor of California, enacted the Mulford Act, which then restricted most of Californians from having guns. But the whole time, we had white Americans carrying in California. We had white Americans carrying everywhere else. But it wasn't until a black resistance group, I want you guys to understand that. It wasn't until black resistance.
He's making a good argument with this. 100%.
Group, Black Panther parties came out and started to protect their communities that America said, oh, we have to have more strict gun laws.
So what he said is true and what he said is accurate and right. And it's a good point. I just don't think it's a good point for what we're actually talking about here, which is gun violence is destroying black communities.
So what I'm hearing is there's a belief that Black communities have a high presence of firearms for various reasons.
Yeah, it's called Animes, Anamies, which basically the ideation that like your morals shift based on the environment you're in. So I did a study specifically on Egypt and how they had their uprising and how people were starting to sell drugs on the street, and why did they do that? Well, that was the only way to feed their children. And so people don't wake up and go like, I want to be a drug dealer. It's like, hey, back in the time where you couldn't even get a job based on your skin color, what you had to do to survive was a lot different than everyone else. And so when you get into things that are illegal, because that is literally all you can do, you then have to basically have a gun. You have to change the way that you view the world, because that's the world that you're given. So you're like, hey, I'm in selling drug business, and to compete, I need a gun to be safe. I'm gonna get robbed. And it creates this environment. Now, when we shift forward where everything's quote unquote equal, it's like, why are you guys still having guns? Well, that's what we grew up around. That's what we knew. That's what we know.
All right, I'm gonna bring in our disagreeers.
Whew, where to start? So I think if you want to talk about systemic racism, and I do, I have a background in criminal justice reform, gun control is one of the most systemic racist laws on the books, dating back to slavery, where we prohibited slaves from having guns because obviously an armed population could rise up. After slavery ended, you had the black codes continuing to try to block black people from being able to access guns because they weren't full citizens. Then you had the 14th Amendment come in, so now everything should be clear. But no, states started putting in facially neutral laws in the 1870s, where basically they still had things on the books to block black people from getting guns. That's a history that has followed us. I love that you brought up the Black Panthers. This should be a wake-up call. Yes, when the black community has started to organize after things like the Atlanta massacre and the Tulsa race riots, what happened? They started arming themselves. They started rising up. You had the Deacons of Defense that were out here guarding Martin Luther King Jr., and they came in and squashed them. Shortly after 1964, you get the Civil Rights Act. 1968, they come in and pass the Gun Control Act.
This woman knows what she's talking about. She is highly intelligent and she's well researched. She knows exactly what the fuck she's talking about.
Which creates a system that has a background check and all of this, but most importantly, it starts stating things that people can be stripped of their gun rights for. And what's chief among it? Having a felony. Who's most likely to be arrested? Black people are 6 times more likely to have a record than white people. This is the scam. It has always been about eliminating black people's rights to access their Second Amendment. It's super racist. And today we see that continuing to play out in the black community. So, but to say that like gun control or guns are the problem, no, like in fact, what we're doing is we're making them more likely to be targeted by police. This is where you get stop and frisk. It's about gun control. They only get something off them like 3% of times, but it gives them the excuse to come in and shake them down. You have, I think, 20% higher likelihood that black people to this day are convicted, sentenced, and given sentencing enhancements, that's from the Sentencing Commission, if they're black. So this is something that has continued to be targeted against the black community. And what I can't understand from your side is why would you come in and say, give that same government more power?
But are you
like,
saying?
Sometimes I think mental health gets vastly overblamed for these things. Occasionally, yes, but more often it is because of the fact that people don't have opportunities. They get involved with gangs. They're looking for places to go. Violence is very limited to people under age 25. Once their brain is fully developed and once they get the resources they need to get on a better pathway out of these communities, you see violence.
Well, we fully agree.
The thing funny to me is y'all talk all this violence, but I'm in the streets with these people. The same people that you talk about come up to me. I make YouTube videos. I get banned all the time. I teach proper stuff, how to fly with a gun, how to do this with a gun. I get banned. You can't even find my stuff. And you know what? People come up to me and say, hey, Rambo, man, I really appreciate you, man. Without you, I wouldn't know how to do this. I wouldn't know how to do this. Hey, Rambo, I make bullets. You know how many calls I got from people? Like, I got goosebumps. Calls I got from people say, your bullets saved my life.
But are you saying violence isn't an issue in those communities?
What is an issue with every community? It's gangs, man.
I think that
you're
violence
saying
is like
that you're
it's
of the
higher
mindset of
in
more guns would
those
help.
black communities.
I can't say more guns will help. I think more control with like gangs and stuff. It's not like regular people just running around, just shooting them up, killing people.
But where do the gangs get their guns?
Right.
Guess what? From anywhere. You don't think they can get them from overseas? You telling me a boat of guns never came from overseas?
Well, no, it relates to the government.
What? This is insane. This is nuts. I can't believe he just said that. Of course guns come from overseas and from across the border. Are you out of your mind? Most of the biggest gun manufacturers are based overseas. I need to check this. Hold on. I don't know about most, but a good amount. I would say at least half of gun manufacturers are based in places outside the U.S. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Guns will help. I think more control with like gangs and stuff. It's not like regular people just running around just shooting them up, killing people.
But where do the gangs get their guns?
Right.
Guess what? From anywhere. You don't think they can't get them from overseas? You telling me a boat of guns never came from overseas?
Well, no, it relates to the government.
You telling me they never ship guns from overseas? I know the people that used to do it, man. What you talking about?
We do know that in about 40% of homicides, they were obtained illegally. So where they got it, how they got it illegally, this is one other thing I wanted to address when you guys were saying about guns getting stolen off cars. I had a gun stolen in my car. I'm very good with my gun. I would never take it off my person if it were in my control. I had to take it out because I was at the Capitol in Tennessee lobbying. I wasn't allowed to take it into the governor's office, even though he could carry in there. But I had to put it in my car, put it in my glove box. It was a last minute thing, and I was like, okay, I guess I have to leave this in my car.
Did you lock your
locked my car? Yeah, I did everything I could. Broke in, stole it. This is how people, and it's literally, I mean.
Do you think in that case, if you weren't allowed to carry a gun in your car on you, that it wouldn't have gotten stolen?
Had the government not disarmed me and made me go put my gun in my car, it wouldn't have been stolen. Everybody would have been safe.
Why have a gun? How come you can't have a taser, or how come you can't have pepper spray?
What's a taser gonna do to a?
What the fuck's a taser gonna do, buddy? Do you not live in the real world? A taser? Get the fuck out of here.
250 pound man.
It doesn't matter how much he weighs.
Listen,
You can just tase them, pepper spray up,
Have
and
you
then
not
run
seen
away.
videos of people getting tased and continue to come at you? Like, that does
But
not.
I think there's an extreme of like, you're going to protect yourself. If someone walks.
This nigga said a taser. Tell me you've never really been in danger without telling me you've never really been in danger.
Let me ask you a question. If you live somewhere you couldn't eat, you couldn't feed nobody, you got guns all the way around your house, everything, you wouldn't get a gun to protect yourself.
But that's what we
and
said.
they breaking in doors. But criminals all over though.
To be honest, for me,
So you're saying you would get rid of like murder being illegal because clearly people still murder, right?
You can't stop it.
But why do we have murder being illegal if it still happens? What's
Because
the
you
point?
want to catch people.
Because we can at least
come on,
prosecute
man.
them and put them in jail.
So we're there. So you get it. So we know that like by having these laws, it will still reduce it. We've seen it.
Yeah,
in
it's
other
definitely going to
countries.
There shouldn't be laws that apply to people like us.
So that's where we need to agree
More
on, which
laws
is
won't make a more reduction.
Wait,
we will.
I don't
did you
think so.
say the law?
You can look at prohibition and tell that this is fucking cap. This is stupid. Yeah, there should be a law against murder, for sure. But I would argue that if murdering wasn't against the law, it wouldn't increase by that much. Because people don't want to kill people like that. It's not something people want to do.
Law shouldn't apply to people like
No,
you.
I'm saying you guys are talking about banning guns. All of a sudden we went straight to like we are anti-gun and we are pro-gun to like let's ban guns. Why are you so eager to take away the freedom of people who use weapons properly for the sake of people who are going to go and use them improperly?
Because this is the equivalent of me saying right now there's 300,000 cases of drunk driving a year, and of those a small fraction get in a car accident. Why take away my right to drink and drive just because you can't
let's take
hold
away
your
your
liquor?
car because your car cannot drive itself, just like a gun cannot fire itself. So if you take
Bing bong.
away my ability to own and fire a gun.
Her analogy's right.
Because your
she's
weapon is
talking
the
about-
car.
Yeah.
Your
Your
weapon is you abusing the car.
A car is a weapon.
Yeah, you're talking about you.
Does
We're not talking about you.
Let's go back to the prompt. Remember, we're talking, just in this section, we're talking about gun violence destroying black communities, whether or not you agree with that.
I feel like I can speak to it because I just graduated high school and I'm a black student. I went to school at a primarily black and Hispanic school. So there's like a bit of, I don't want to say gang presence, but that kind of like vibe, I guess. I was worried sometimes that people were going to bring guns to school, and it had been threatened a couple of times. We had to skip school. I think, if they didn't have access to these guns, first of all, the gangs wouldn't have as much power, and I wouldn't have missed out on quality learning time because these people threatened to bring a gun into school. And look,
I'm going to keep it a buck. I would be infinitely more afraid of getting shot up at an all-white school than at a black school. I can't even remember the last time I saw in the news that a school in a non-rich area in like a school on like Muhammad Ali Boulevard got shot up. I can't think of one. But every time I do think of a school shooting, it's always a very nice neighborhood school of predominantly white children with a bunch of parents like, we've never seen anything like this. We don't understand how this could have happened. So what she's saying to me doesn't sound correct. Maybe she thought there was somebody was going to bring a gun to school because like maybe there was a fight. The person who lost is like, I'm going to come back and smoke all y'all, which reads into this is a more of a violence issue than a gun issue. This is more of a hopelessness issue than a gun issue. But if I had to pick which school, if I had to pick for sure, like which school would I rather go to not get shot and killed? It would be a black school every single time.
I can't say that it happens any more or less at like a primarily white school, but I'm just speaking from my experience. Guns were an issue, and there was going to be there's a possibility of like real violence happening, you know?
Can I point something to that too? I think if we focused on gun-free zones, we could kind of question why it is that you had to leave the premise too, right? So these gang members would come to your campus and would hinder your education. So what would happen if the administration or staff was loaded and ready to protect children instead of allowing mass shootings in children to occur? What would happen?
Okay, so I actually really hate that argument. Like we should have the teachers and administration should have guns. More guns is not gonna help anything because at the end of the day, like let's just say you shoot the school shooter, right? Then that's still a dead person, right? And their life.
But it's less dead people. You shoot the school shooter, one person dies. School shooter shoots 10 people. Tell me which one's worse.
If you get rid of every gun, right? You get rid of every gun. Look at the countries that already did it. What happens?
Australia had.
Okay, and what happens? What happens?
They
What happens?
they had
I lived in Japan.
So
they start stabbing people.
Okay.
Right or wrong? Am I right?
Bing bong.
Right or
It
wrong?
also has
The
the
stabbing
highest
goes
rates
up,
of
right?
suicide.
Stab is a lot easier
Hold on.
A stab is a lot easier?
to recover from
Are
than
you
a
sure?
gunshot wound.
Yeah.
We've kind of moved to a lot of different areas, but I do want just a show of hands. Who is in favor of action to remove illegally obtained firearms from communities?
Nobody wants illegal guns in the community.
I mean, I have some, what does that require when it comes to the policing and the interactions that they're going to have with the people in those communities? This is the same thing to me as saying, like, should we go in and remove all illegal drugs? Like, no, product bans don't work. It doesn't work if you ban drugs. It doesn't work if you ban abortion. It doesn't work if you ban immigration. It doesn't work if you ban drugs.
They're still gonna
People
come
are
in.
going
Does
to
it
obtain
reduce
it.
it?
And
They're
just because
still
somebody
gonna-
has an illegally
So you
obtained gun
don't-
does not mean they're a violent person.
And I just want to get your opinion clearly on this. Do you think there's a correlation between the presence of illegally obtained firearms and the rates of violence in certain communities?
Absolutely. But I also
But
think
you
when you
don't
look
think
at public
something should be
policy
done to-
approaches, you have to make sure that the secondary side effects of those approaches are not worse. And when you're talking about sending in police to clamp down on communities
But we
that
didn't say
happen to
that.
have
No one-
higher
no one
rates,
said
well,
that.
that is what you're saying, though.
No one said
that requires policing to come in
don't
and
believe police should have
confiscate.
firearms.
But then what's one proposed solution?
I mean, community-informed programs. I mean, we see it in Massachusetts. They have community safety programs where individuals go out who are not armed, and they go around neighborhoods of domestic abuse cases, mental health episodes when somebody's having a mental breakdown.
Right, though. Call-ins, Operation Ceasefire, like these things
That's
work.
all good.
These
but
are-
Without firearms, though. That's what I'm proposing.
But listen to what
Without
y'all saying. Where is
firearms.
that working at? Are y'all going in the middle of Chicago,
No,
but I think
in New Orleans, doing that type
Well,
of
some
stuff?
of these
exactly
programs
right.
are.
She's exactly
Some
right,
of these
which
programs
is-
are. They're going into places like Oakland. They're working and like this is interesting because I've worked around a lot of criminal justice reform. So I've worked with very left-wing people on this, and most of them are not anti-gun because they recognize that there are so many secondary consequences to that, and they recognize that the gun is not the problem. The underlying causes of violence are. And so yeah, they do these community-based programs that are completely like free of government for the most part, which is like based, love that. And they come in and they have people who were formerly caught up in gang life. They have people who've been victims of violence even. They do these interactions where they go to the hospital when there's been a gang shooting and try to intervene and prevent there from being retaliation. And yeah, they work. They do see a statistical difference in violence, a meaningful difference, and it's without having to involve the police or the government or come in and take away people's guns. So
Okay, we gotta
I think
reset.
those things are great ideas.